So I'm thrilled to have all you come out. Really delighted to spend some time with you. I want to tell you a little bit about the origin of why I wanted to do this, and then just kind of throw it open for discussion, questions, whatever. So I had a young person come to me about 3 months ago, maybe. Our Lady Good Counsel grade school, Catholic high school, exceptional family. Like Mass every Sunday, they're there. Okay, so they're not mailing it in. They practice the faith. Don't guess who it is. Does it start with? No. And just wanted to talk. Goes to a Catholic college now. Early on in their academic career. And more or less said to me, after 3 months at a Catholic school, I don't think I believe anymore. Because of some things that were said to her, some things that were said about Catholicism, in this case, by a Catholic and by a professor. So I caught Chris after this and just said, hey, we need to do something for a couple of different purposes, to both gather people who are on their way into college to just speak frankly about some things, and then to maybe like detox people who are home from college who are going back. So how many people are going into freshman year? All right. You have no idea what you're in for. Where are you going? State? Okay. Where's everybody else? U of M, Dearborn, Notre Dame, U of M in Ann Arbor. Who else is going somewhere? Where are you going? Indiana. So we got 4 folks with us who are doing campus ministry at U of M Ann Arbor. I ran into Brian the other day after Mass and said, hey, we're going to do this night. So for those of you going to U of M, you're at the right table, you know. But they'd be great to just maybe network with. I'd love to have them weigh in because they're doing full-time ministry at U of M right now, and so it's worth kind of picking their brains. I'm 52, so it's been a while since I was in college. I don't remember college for a lot of reasons. Went to Michigan, and Michigan was bad when I went there. But as friends of mine who serve as professors in college campuses often put it, college is thousands of times more toxic today than it was when I was in school in the 80s. It's just totally different. And it's not even so much the like the party scene or something like that. That's always been prevalent in college campuses, more or less, right, since the 60s. And even before that, it just kind of changed its style in the 60s. What's different now is either the overt or the covert hostility towards faith. So thinking of a guy went to med school, graduated from U of M recently, raised his hand to ask a question about particular sexual practices in a class, because the professor was going on and on about the harm of smoking and how you have an obligation as a physician to speak frankly to your patients about the dangers of smoking. So the guy raised his hand. He says, Professor, this is really helpful. Appreciate all this. Based on the same principles that you're talking about right now, wouldn't it be fair to say that certain sexual behaviors are dangerous and harmful to a person's health for exactly the same reason that you just walked us through? Was mocked soundly by the professor, totally ostracized by the academic community, and just shunned. So I got a call from a guy who plays college football, who belongs to the parish. It was like day one. School hasn't even started yet. I mean, they're still just in football. Calls me, all upset. Need to talk to you. He's doing some summer school classes right now before fall term starts. Day one, somehow the topic of life came up, and he started talking about the sanctity of life. Just got shot down, ridiculed, mocked, put in a corner. This is a big boy. And that's supposed to be intellectual integrity, intellectual honesty, radical pursuit of truth, open-mindedness. The irony is, on many college campuses, not at all of them by any means, but on many college campuses, whether you're Catholic or you're not Catholic, there is often, we want to be careful not to make generalizations, no such thing as really open, honest, intellectual discussions. And that puts anyone with faith in a precarious spot. One of a number of things could happen. Either you will be evangelized away from the gospel. Some people would say there's only one. So evangelization is the wrong word to use, they would say, because to evangelize means to share the good news. But everybody's trying to convert. Everybody's trying to convert. Right? Madison Avenue is trying to convert. Facebook's trying to convert. Google's trying to convert. Planned Parenthood's trying to convert. I'm very upfront about my agenda. I'm trying to convert. Like, I'm passionate about Jesus. I believe he's telling the truth when he says, I have come that you might have abundant life. I believe he's trustworthy, truthful, and that no one's given more reasons to trust us than he has. So I'm upfront about it. But on academic campuses, oftentimes, under the guise of the pursuit of truth, there's really no such thing, which is tragic. So you might get won by them, like this person who came to see me was, just felt like their faith was totally dismantled and didn't know if she was standing on solid ground anymore. Or you might hide in a corner. You might just say, this is not a fight worth going after. I don't want to flunk. And you might. So you end up then being intellectually dishonest with yourself, saying, okay, if I write this or I say this, I might not get the grade I want, so I'll just say the things that I know they want me to say, which is a really miserable way to live life. You might stand up and then kind of get pushed over to the side. Or you might find friends and a community of people that you can walk with. And so one of the hopes for tonight is for us, if those of us who know each other, great. You know, Chris is hopefully gathering names and emails and whatnot so that you guys can stay in touch with each other so that you can be talking back and forth with one another, even if you're on different campuses, and just go, hey, this happened today. Anything going on in your life that you can help me with? Just to find support from each other. It's great to have the folks from U of M here just to make some connections with you guys, and I'd love to have you. You're in the scene right now talking with kids and what's going on and not at a tame place, right? So love to have you guys share if there's anything that's on your minds that you feel like is really valuable. But that's the origin of tonight. Does that make sense? There is, Chris was great. He put together a set of questions to kind of start the conversation going, but and they're good questions too. But I'd love to hear what might be on our minds. If you guys have anything on your minds that you really want to talk about, maybe it might be worth some wisdom from those of you who've been on campus for a year or so or two, who've experienced some things like, yeah, people kept saying it was going to be whatever, and I didn't believe them, and wow, has been. Or no, where I am, it's really not that bad. These are some things that I've found that have been helpful for me. It'd be worth maybe talking a little bit about habits that would be good to get in place so that I can just live a healthy life, you know. Because those of you on your way into school, like, everything's about to change. I mean, it's a completely different world. When you leave home and you have access to anything, anytime, and you have no one watching over you, there's lots of opportunities for lots of things. So if people have wisdom that you want to share, that's great. I don't want I don't want to be the one who's doing all the talking tonight. Happy to answer questions if people want, but that's why I wanted us to get together. Fair enough? Yeah? Why'd you come? It wasn't for the food. Ain't nothing to eat. So why'd you come? What are you hoping for? Not a rhetorical question. Actually, yeah.
Well, I'm leaving Friday, so.
You're leaving Friday. Hope you're
some.
packed.
Yeah.
So you're going to meet with the campus ministry at IU?
Yeah.
What's the ministry?
Catholics.
Okay, great. Okay, so meeting with the ministry, hoping to get some advice, whatever. So, anybody got any advice they want to share? Who's been in college for a year or 2 or 3 and wants to offer some helpful tips? So, most famous graduate of Indiana University who's profoundly changed the way this culture lives its life is who? Do you even know? Who? Who would you guess is the most significant Indiana University figure who has profoundly changed the way our culture lives? They made a movie about him. It's not Isaiah Thomas. Liam Neeson played him. Does anybody know? You don't know. Chris know? Guys ever heard of Kinsey? Alfred Kinsey. Wow, you've never heard of Alfred Kinsey. So Kinsey is one of the architects of the culture of death. Kinsey is responsible for, in large part, the total transformation of our understanding of sexual norms because of the research that he did, including research that he did on children. Like how do you find information on an arousal curve of a young boy? You do work. That's called pedophilia. So Indiana has on its campus a massive center with Kinsey's records, films. Kinsey's one of the most depraved people. I can't say out loud the things this guy used to like to do. He's a god at Indiana. If you don't know anything about this man, please go home and find out about this man. And see the result of his work and his research. There's a movie made about him, and Liam Neeson plays him, not because they want to expose how depraved he was, but because they want to lift him up as a man who had a lot of courage, challenge religious norms. Never mind that his research was done on sexual deviance in prison and on children, among other places. That's where you're going. Welcome to college. But the question was, looking for some last-minute tips. So who's been in school? On your way back, who's got some, like, oh, yeah, I wish someone had told me that before I went into college. Anybody got anything they want to share?
Really can drain you real fast.
So you're saying make it a point to find out not only where the campus ministry center is, but to go there often.
Yes.
So one of the things I hear there that's just really simple, practical advice, like you can't live the Christian life alone. You just can't do it. You're not made to do it, first of all. We're made for community, right? So, but you really can't live this life alone. It's too hard. I mean, there's so many pressures from so many places coming against us. And starting with inside me. Like, deal with and come to grips with the fact that you are a rebellious creature, as am I. Like, I'm hardwired because of the fall to be resistant to God. I want to be God. Just the sooner you can admit that and deal with it, the better off you'll be. And so it's not just external pressures, it's internal pressures. So we have these realities that we're dealing with. So you need community. That's what I hear you say. And so one of the things that I would suggest to you as you're heading off to school is, like, start thinking now. I just met with a kid earlier today. I was on the way to college in a couple weeks. Have you thought about a plan you're going to have for yourself? Just good habits. You know, like, how are you going to... So this person already knows his class schedule. So some of you do, some of you don't. But once you do, like, just, like, lock in certain things. You know, like, these are the non-negotiables for human life. I need food. I need water. I need sleep. I need prayer. Like, I need prayer like I need oxygen. I have to pray. Meaning I need to be alone with the Lord. I don't need to say prayers. It's a worthwhile thing to say prayers, but there's a big difference between saying prayers and praying. We can just mouth things all the time. But we need to pray. We need to be in dialogue with God. If you're Catholic, you need the sacraments. You know, like, just... I'm thinking of another kid who I've known most of their life, know the family very well, was privileged to walk with them through some different sacraments and kind of stand there with them. 3 months into college, reached out, said, "How you doing?" And the response was, "I am amazed how easy it was to just stop practicing my faith. I haven't been to church since September." This was December. So you just got to, like, put it into your phone, like it's in your calendar. It's a reminder, whatever. It goes off, like Mass, pray, go to bed, eat. Even if it's ramen noodles, like, eat, you know, drink water. Other things at times, right? Responsibly, if you're of age. So you just need these things, but you just got to make a schedule of some sort. Community. Like, especially for men, we try to go, I don't need anybody. I got this. Thanks. Like, I'm strong enough. No, you're not. You're just not. And God has a way of reminding us of that. You just land on your face and you go, I think I need other people in my life to help me do this. So find people. That's what I'm hearing there. Does that make some sense? Yeah. Other things from people who've been off. Got anything to add about school after a year? Yeah, so I hear there, one of the things I would maybe add to that would be somehow someone's, we've just kind of swallowed as if it's true that there is a conflict between faith and reason, or faith and science. There is no conflict. But there's just no conflict. The founder of the university is the Catholic Church. It's passionate about truth. It's passionate about learning. Because it sees the world as having been created by a God who wants to be known. And so we see creation as one of his books, if you will. God has two books. He has the scriptures and he has the world. And he speaks to us in both. So many of us, especially perhaps your generation, we've just so grown up accustomed to yet faith versus science. There's two kinds of people. Intellectuals, intelligent, reasonable, well thought out, academics, studious, and people with faith. Ignorant, dumb, backwater, whatever. It's just a lie. Now, there might be some intellectually small-minded people with faith, but a lot of the people over here who want to hide behind science and reason and whatnot, they actually have more faith than some of these people. They just have faith in something else. They have faith in the mind in a very dogmatic way. So there is no conflict. So as we go into school, or go back to school, we want to make sure that when we don't know the reasons for things, we learn them. Like God gave you a mind to know. And that's what the mind hungers for. It hungers to know. It hungers to know truth. So when you don't know something, run and find people you can go ask questions for. If I want to learn about NASCAR, I'm going to go talk to John Stockwell. I'm not going to talk to my mom. My mom doesn't know beans about NASCAR. So if I want to learn about faith, I'm going to go to somebody who has faith and say, I'm troubled by this. Looks like the church hates these people here. But I don't think God hates. So am I missing something? Can you help me understand that? And then hopefully somebody can walk you through some things. Okay? Other reasons why you came, or questions that you might have on your mind. I'd much rather ask get into your questions than pose mine. So we just threw out a bunch of things. We went from Big Bang to moral compass to whatever. So oftentimes I just find it a helpful thing to ask questions because I want to make sure I understand what you're actually asking. Yeah. So you contrasted God created versus Big Bang, for example. Yeah. But the church wouldn't see a contrast there. What makes you think that the Big Bang rules God out?
Well, I don't think it does.
Not you, the person who's saying that. So you're interlocutor.
Okay. Yeah.
So why do you think the church would say that the Big Bang somehow disproves God? I think you can just keep asking questions and go, I'm really having a hard time understanding why you think that an understanding of creation that was caused by the Big Bang would somehow rule out faith. What caused the Big Bang? Because I'm a Catholic, I'm not a fundamentalist. So I don't read the creation accounts in Genesis the way a fundamentalist would. So I don't think or believe that God created in 6 24-hour days. I don't think that because on the third day he created the sun. How do you get a day without a sun? So maybe your understanding of Big Bang versus faith is not what you think it is. I mean, that's an example of a way I get into it with someone. Yeah. Okay? That's just an example of, here's a high school student who is, not you, your friends, classmates, who've just kind of swallowed this enormous myth that the church has been contrary to reason and science from the beginning, and we're trying to just keep people in ignorance. If that was the case, why would we have universities? Why would the Vatican have an astronomy? Why would, or an observatory, I should say. Why would countless priests down through the ages give themselves to the pursuit of serious education and learning and science? Name stars. Find cures for diseases. It just doesn't hold up to history. Does that make sense to people? You guys know who Flannery O'Connor is? Who's never heard of Flannery O'Connor? Raise your hand. Come on. So Flannery O'Connor is this great Catholic author. She's dead now. She was a English professor. So she wrote this letter once to, this is back in 1962, but still timely. Let me just share this with you because I think it's still spot on. It's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever seen for somebody going off to college. So Flannery was 37 at the time. And she wrote a letter back to a guy named Alfred who was experiencing struggles with his faith. This is what she writes. She says, I think that this experience you are having of losing your faith, or as you think of having lost it, is an experience that in the long run belongs to faith. I don't know how the kind of faith required of a Christian living in the 20th century can be at all if it's not grounded on this experience that you are having right now of unbelief. In other words, to ask questions is not to show that you don't have faith. The refusal to believe is the opposite of faith. Doubts provoke us to ask questions. Questions lead us to learn. Peter said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. It's the most natural and most human and most agonizing prayer in the Gospels. and I think it is the foundation prayer of faith. As a freshman in college, now this is 1962, you are bombarded with new ideas, or rather, pieces of ideas. New frames of reference, an activation of the intellectual life which is only beginning, but which is already running ahead of your lived experience. After a year of this, you think you cannot believe. You're just beginning to realize how difficult it is to have faith and the measure of a commitment to it. But you're too young to decide you don't have faith just because you feel you can't believe. One result of the stimulation of your intellectual life that takes place in college is actually a shrinking of the imaginative life. This sounds like a paradox, but I've often found it to be true. Students get so bound up with difficulties such as reconciling the clashing of so many different faiths that they cease to look for God in other ways. The intellectual difficulties have to be met, however, and you will be meeting them for the rest of your life. Where you have absolute solutions, however, you have no need of faith. Faith is what you have in the absence of knowledge, or I would say of perfect knowledge. I might actually challenge that a little bit. You can't fit the Almighty into your intellectual categories. That's spot on. What kept me a skeptic in college was precisely my Christian faith. It always said, wait, don't bite on this. Get a wider picture. Continue to read. If you want your faith, you have to work for it. It is a gift, but for very few is it a gift given without any demand for equal time devoted to its cultivation. For every book you read that's anti-Christian, and you will read many, make it your business to read one that represents the other side of the picture. If one isn't satisfactory, read others. Don't think that you have to abandon reason to be a Christian. To find out about faith, you have to go to the people who have it, and you have to go to the most intelligent ones if you're going to stand up intellectually to agnostics and the general run of pagans that you're going to find in the majority of people around you. It's a great letter. It goes on from there, but I've always found that to be some of the most helpful writings, however old it might be, 50-some years old at this point. It's just spot on. You don't have to abandon reason to keep faith. So one of the things that I was just going to share with you, one of the challenges that often comes our way, because the foundation of our faith is what? Well, that's the problem. How many people here are Christian? And the foundation of our faith is what?
Resurrection.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you say it with confidence. Resurrection? Yeah, the resurrection, right? Which, of course, just attracts all sorts of attacks, right? So either Jesus rises or he doesn't. If he's dead, decomposed, body stolen, whatever, I mean, you and I are wasting our time. Go home. Have at it. Do whatever. Who cares how it makes you feel? If this is not true, the hell with it. Really? So that's a claim you want to investigate. And the attack that's often put against us is, yeah, but that was written so long ago. I mean, really, can we believe that? Are the sources reliable? So anybody here a history major? Or want to be a history major? No. Lovely. So we're doomed to repeat it, thanks to you. Great, thanks. So there's this great little chart that a guy I know put together, which I've always found to be just a helpful thing. So in literature and whatnot, you have what's called textual criticism. So in textual criticism, to try to get reliability of sources, you always want to look at how close to the original are the sources that we have, or are the copies that we have, and how many do we have, okay? So say something was written, it's talking about an event that happened 800 years ago. You're going to look for things that are close to the event, and you're going to look for lots of them. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? That's how you do textual criticism. So there's a whole set of things. I'll just read a couple of them. For example, that in a university history class of antiquities, no one would challenge. So, for example, something like Herodotus. So Herodotus is known as the father of history. He writes a series called The Histories. Herodotus writes 5th century BC. No one would challenge what he's doing. He's trying to get past kind of a legendary or a mythic approach to history and really do some investigation. Okay? That's why he's the father of history. There's real inquiry into things. So he's 5th century BC. The oldest copy that we have is from 900 AD. What's the gap? Carry the 2. 1400 years, right? Okay? We got 8 copies. Now, that might seem like a ton. That might seem like a small amount of time, whatever. Tacitus writes lives of the Roman emperors and chronicles of Roman history. He writes around 100 AD. The earliest copy we got is from 1100, so gap of 1,000 years. We got 20 copies, so twice as many as we've got for Herodotus. Julius Caesar writes a series of histories on his Gallic wars against the people of Gaul. Caesar dies in 50 BC or so. Earliest copy we got 900 AD. Gap of 950 years, we got 9 copies. The New Testament. So New Testament's written between 40 and, say, the end of the 1st century at the outset. Okay. Earliest copies we got, well, some of them are at the University of Michigan, are from 130. Got a full manuscript of the entire New Testament from 350. So for a full manuscript of the New Testament, the gap is what? 300 years. You know how many copies we have? You know how many copies we have in Greek? 1,000. You know how many copies we have in Latin? 10,000. Other various languages? 9,300. So just back up the bus for a minute and go, okay, wait a minute. So serious university historians would have no problem teaching from Caesar's Gallic Wars, from Tacitus, from Herodotus, from a whole set of other people for whom we have no copy within 900 years of the actual date and for whom we have very few copies. And all of a sudden, the history of the New Testament is called into question? There isn't a more historically reliable document that you're ever going to study than the New Testament, based on those categories. So much for intellectual honesty. Right? To me, that's huge, guys, as you head off to school. Like, I need to know that there's lots of ways I can know, but I need to know that this isn't just some myth. First of all, the style of the scriptures as they're written is not written mythically. The New Testament is claiming over and over and over again, and there are reasons both to think and to believe that when they say they are eyewitnesses, they mean it. Our environment just says, I don't know that I can believe that because because it talks about miracles, which means I've already come into the conversation with a perspective that says miracles don't happen. That's fine. You can have that perspective. That's not an open mind. So much for letting the truth lead. So you can believe that, but that's a belief. That's a faith. Does that make sense to you guys? Maybe? Maybe not. I just think that's one of the things in my mind that's just so crucial in like having a firm foundation to stand on, because the center of it all is the faith in the resurrection. And I don't just believe Jesus rose from the dead. I do believe that. But I also think that the reasons for saying that Jesus is alive are a lot stronger than the reasons anybody can put forth to say that he's not. I think I have sound historical reasons. History is not like science. You can't put it in a test tube and verify it in the same way. So you verify it based on the credibility of witnesses. And the credibility of the witnesses who are saying Jesus is alive is off the chart. Think of any other myth that's out there that people want to try to equate Christianity with. Show me the cathedrals, the symphonies, the masterpieces of art, the lives that have been dedicated, the people who have served the poor, all in the name of that myth. So can I interrupt real quick? I hear two things that you're saying that I think are really important, if I can just highlight, especially for those of you who can't hear. So one is the authenticity or the reliability, the historical veracity of the New Testament is one thing, and it's there. It's not the only thing that's there. It's the lives of the saints, the witness of the saints, miracles which continue to be ongoing. But even more simply, what's most necessary, I would say, is our witness. So I'm thinking we have a guy here in the parish, great guy, who came into the church a couple years ago, was baptized. He's shared his story lots of times, so I'm not talking out of school or something. So he had some really traumatic experiences when he was younger, hated Christianity and hated Christians. Got invited to the Alpha course that we do here, which is just kind of an experience to kind of like begin to have an encounter of Jesus. He had no interest in Jesus whatsoever. He just kind of found himself there. Couldn't stand what he was listening to. Was predisposed to just, y'all are nuts, if not worse. Didn't want to hear the gospel. But after a couple weeks, this would meet once a week for 11 weeks or so. After a couple weeks, he looked at the people who were hosting this at their home, and he said something to this effect. He says, I don't know if he said I hate God, but I have no interest in God. And I have no interest in Christianity. But I can't deny that you care about me. And that you love me. So I'm here. I'm staying. And he kept interacting with them. And now he's like the poster child for Alpha. And came into the church, is baptized. He's this huge evangelist. How did he get there? He got there because, in his case, the obstacle to coming into the church was us. And so John Paul would always say the church is tired, or the world is tired of hearing about the faith. They want to see it. I want to see saints. So the witness of our lives, I mean, how many people have you known, even in high school, right, who just says, this Catholic stuff is just stupid. I got friends who go out, they party all night long on Friday night and Saturday, and then they go to confession, they think it's all just gone. I mean, it's just hypocrisy, right? So they look at us, like most people aren't Christian because of Christians. That's one thing I heard in you. So our witness, the witness of the saints, yep, absolutely, and miracles that are happening in contemporary times, very important, very worth knowing about ourselves. But God wants me to be a saint. And he wants you to be a saint. And if we were saints, the world would be different. Because nothing's more attractive than a saint. You meet a saint, you want to do one of two things. You want to hang out with him, or you want to kill him. Right? That's the response to Jesus. No one looked at Jesus and went, yeah, kind of boring, whatever. We think that because we just don't know the Gospels. But no one was bored by Jesus. Like Peter Crave says, we've turned wine back into water. We've undone the miracle of Cana. We've made the only person in history who never bored anybody boring. Like, that takes some work, people. That's on us. All right? I might be boring. You're not boring, but some of y'all might be boring. But Jesus ain't boring, right? So the response to Jesus was, I'm dropping everything and I'm following that man, or crucify him. Get him out of here. That's the first thing I heard in you. Second thing I heard in you. People often say things like, if I saw a miracle, I'd believe. Not true. Just not true. Lots of places we could look. Just look in the Gospels themselves. So Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. Response to the people at the time, we got to not only kill Jesus, we got to kill Lazarus. I'm looking at a man who was dead, who's alive. Or other things that Jesus does. I can so harden my mind and my heart to the gospel that I just refuse to believe. Why? Because I want to be God. And my image of God is that anyone who's over me, that's an authority over me, must necessarily want to keep me down and therefore impinge and inhibit my freedom, which means to believe is to be less, not more. That's a totally distorted image of God. That is not the image of God that the Scriptures portray. If Jesus wanted to keep me down, he wouldn't have come to offer up his life on a cross. So our understanding of God, that is the objection for a lot of people. If God is real, that means I can't be God. And if I can't be God, then I can't do whatever I want to do. And I think freedom means to be able to do whatever I want to do. And if I can't do that, I don't know how I can be happy. When in fact, these same people are the most depressed, suicidal, lonely, alienated, dislocated people, perhaps in human history. God is not interested in ruining your life. God is interested in giving you abundant life. And he's proven his trustworthiness by going to the cross. Okay? That's what I heard. You said a lot more too, but those are great points. We're not limited to pointing to something from 2,000 years ago. Anybody else? It's a great question. So particularly the challenge of violence in the Old Testament is just that. It's a challenge. There's a couple ways to begin to approach it. And I don't want to claim that any of them is exhaustive, and if Father Dave wants to weigh in, feel free, or anybody's got some insights, I'd love to have them. The simplest starting point would be to say, okay, we always want to read the Scripture in light of the New Testament. Always. So the Old Testament is revelation. It's impartial revelation. It's incomplete. So I always read the Old in light of the New. All the time. So there's a pedagogy that's going on in the Old Testament. God is gradually revealing himself to his... So, like, why doesn't Jesus just show up to Moses? Like, why go through all these pages, hundreds of years, waiting for a Messiah? Like, why doesn't God just come? Go, here I am. Like, dum-dum, believe in me. Let's get on with this. Let's go to heaven. Like, why does the pedagogy take so long? I don't know. Maybe it's because our race is so stupid and so obtuse that we gradually have to be indoctrinated. I don't know. Indoctrinate might not be the right word. Yeah, it is the right word. Be taught. So there's a pedagogy that's going on. So clearly there are things that are happening in the Old Testament which we look at now with 21st century, especially American eyes, and we go, how barbaric. When in fact, they're almost always less barbaric than the cultural norms. So that's the first thing we just want to be aware of. But second, they're not meant to be definitive. That's why we don't stone people caught in adultery. Okay? So I want to read it through the New. That's a huge part with the Scriptures that's not always present in other religious faiths. I mean, I have an order to reading the Bible. So when I'm stumped with things in the Old Testament, I want to look at the Lord, and the Lord's going to give me the definitive answer. That's why he can say, you have heard, it was said, but I say to you, as the Lord God, love your neighbor, or love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you. Okay, all of a sudden, the Old Testament hasn't been abolished, it's been fulfilled. Does that make sense? That's the first place to begin. The next place to begin, which really doesn't help with respect to the violence of what was done at the time, but it's a way in which I read it, right? So I need to ask the question, why was there the command to begin with to do some of these things? Like, what is the danger of idolatry? Why is there this instruction on to commit what's called the ban to destroy peoples, which we wouldn't do now, okay? But why would it even be there to begin with? And how do I read that as a Christian now and as a disciple of Jesus? So, again, I don't want to claim the definitive answer to that because I don't know if there is one, but a way to begin to approach that would be, okay, so I need to ask the question, what's so bad about idolatry? Well, everything. Right? The great commandment is to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. The first commandment is, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods besides you. unless we think that idolatry is something that people practiced a long, long time ago with little statues, you and I suffer from idolatry. An idol is anything that you and I bow down to in any way or look to for a source of my hope other than God. For some people, it's money, it's being in shape, it's the body, it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's whatever. It's my career, it's my reputation. Everybody's struggling with idols. So idolatry is harmful to me. Like the Lord loves me with everything he is, and for me not to love him back it's not bad for him, it's bad for me. And so the command to get rid of those things which could lead me astray suddenly becomes very relevant in my life. Does that make sense to you? So, in other words, the Lord's telling me now, in August of 2017, John, those things that are in your life that are causing you to turn from me, you need to destroy. Not the people, those things, those tendencies, those habits. That's how I pray those passages. Does that make some sense? So I have to be careful to read the scriptures as a whole. Always read the scriptures as a whole. You never proof text, especially from the Old Testament. And then try to understand spiritually, Lord, what are you saying to me? Have some, like for me anyway, I got to have enough humility to go, I'm probably not going to understand the universe. I'm probably just not going to get there. I have some degrees and I know a lot, but I don't know anything. And I know a lot, but I don't know anything. So I'm probably not going to put into my pea little brain the author of the universe and how and why he did some things. That's not to say I shouldn't ask questions, but at times it means I'm going to throw up my hands and go, I don't have a clue. Help, Lord. And I do that a lot when I pray. I'll give you a different example. So, New Testament. Man comes to Jesus with a son who's sick, or a servant who's sick. Says, Lord, my servant's sick. Will you come and heal him, my son? And the Lord looks at the man. Anybody know what he says? It's in the Gospel of John. So here's a dad. So John Stockwell comes to me. So imagine this conversation. John comes to me. He knows me. Like, I've got all this power. I've healed people all over. Great. John comes up to me one day and says, hey, Padre, my son's really sick. I think he's dying. Would you come over and heal him? Just pray with him? And I look at John and I go, man, unless you see signs and wonders, you are never going to believe. That's my answer. How do you think he responds? Like, what kind of answer is that? And the guy looks at Jesus and just says, Lord, my son's dying. Will you please come? And Jesus says, your son's fine. He'll be well. And the man walks away and his son's fine. That ain't Old Testament, that's New Testament. So I'm reading that one day like 20 years ago, and I'm sitting there going, I don't understand that. You are love. You're not loving. You are love. Guy comes, asks you for help. You can help. He shows faith. Your response doesn't sound like love. What am I missing? I'm going to presume the problem's with me. You're God, I'm not. What am I missing? And so, you don't need to know what I felt like the Lord said, but, wrestle with God. That's okay. You're supposed to wrestle with Scriptures. It's how we hear God. You just say to him, Lord, I don't understand what you're saying or why. Help me to get it. And then listen. Right? John the Baptist, rotting in jail. Jesus' cousin, holiest man ever born of woman, according to Jesus' words. Saint John the Baptist sends messages or a message to Jesus one day. And the message is, anybody remember? is why we're ripe to get picked off, people. I want to know the word, right? Otherwise, I'm not standing on anything, right? Father Dave, what's John's question?
Either one or should we look for another?
Yeah. So in the vernacular, was I wrong? Are you really him? Because I'm in jail, rotting, about to be beheaded by some Middle Eastern tyrant, and you're doing nothing for me, and you're not doing anything like I thought you were going to do. So should we just look for somebody else? If St. John the Baptist, the holiest man ever born of woman, can ask a question to Jesus as blunt as, are you really him? I think I got permission to ask some direct questions to Jesus. That's all right. He can handle them. Then I just got to listen when he talks to me. So maybe to put back to like a good thing for heading off to school, get in the habit of reading the Gospels every day and of engaging with the Lord as you pray. When you don't get something, don't just move on, wrestle, and then go find somebody to go like, I don't understand this. Help me understand it.